The Frontline starts now.
And we welcome you to another season of the Frontline podcast, season 5. Kind of wild that we're already halfway to a decade, but here we are. Somehow, some way, people still want to listen to us, Chris. But here we are in a bit of a new locale, a new look studio here for the Frontline this season. I'm your host, Kortney Kenny. Pleased to be here as usual, as I'm going to butcher that right off the hop. But Chris, usually, you like to make a joke that you're the last chance guest half the time. I asked you a couple of days in advance this time.
I'm actually in the ice box, and actually during COVID I used to be in the butterfly position with my son taking shots at me here, so I feel very comfortable. I got a little bit paranoid here that I think a puck's going to come by my ear, but I'm literally in the crease here at the ice box on real synthetic ice that goalies wear, goalie skates, including myself. And anyway, so welcome to the ice box.
Thank you. It's nice to be here to make this our new little home. It's going to be exciting to record the podcast out of. And speaking of podcasts out of here, it's no stranger to podcasts now. You have a new venture since last time we had you on the Frontline podcast with Goalie Resiliency. Yeah,
Goalie Resiliency with Dr. Rob Graham, and we talk about the challenges goalies face, and former Voodoos goalies. We've had Nate McDonald and Mike McIver, who's at the Anaheim Ducks camp this in early September in LA. And played a few games for us. So, and we talk about the challenges goalies face mentally, physically, emotionally, and we talk about some nerdy goalie gear stuff too, but very much geared towards goalies, but a lot of really neat stories that maybe aren't always told that we've been able to reveal without even knowing it sometimes. But that's the great thing about interviewing, right? You sometimes find out stuff that you weren't even prepared for, and that ends up being the best part of the story.
Absolutely, and half of it is, just having a good old time talking about goalies. I could talk about goalies all day, but I never really got to play the position because I was told as a kid that goalie's the laziest position on the ice. So that
would definitely not fit you. Then you're meant, hard worker like yourself.
Tough. It's tough out there, I tell you. Well, let's kind of get into it, Chris, because a new season of the Frontline means that there's a new season of hockey upon us, and of course, Mr. General Manager of the Voodoos here. Tell us a little bit about what we can expect. As we're recording this now, we're a couple of days out from the season opener on Friday against the Timmins Rock. This episode will come out just before that, but what are your expectations here? Coming off a tough finish to last season.
Well, you know what I mean. Every year is there's always changes, and more so than major junior hockey. There's 12, 13, sometimes 14 players coming back. I think last year we had almost an unprecedented amount, having maybe 11 or 12 returners, which is a really high amount. And obviously those guys had we had a tough loss, swept by Timmins 2 years ago, and a lot of those guys were 20 years old and wanted to make something. And I thought we had a great run with all those overtime victories. Brought back a lot of memories of the '93 Canadiens. Not that you were a fan of that,
anyways, a whole 4 months old.
Yes, but you know what? It was some of the greatest memories. In the 10 seasons with the Voodoos was that playoff run, and scoring with like Zach Turner scoring with 5 or 6 seconds left or less, I think, in Game 7, and it's such a seesaw battle against a real tough Timmins Rock team. So that year is gone, and and we have a new season upon us, and a lot of change this year. A few players had decided they want to go in different places. D-Rock is playing down, Danny DiRocolo is playing with the Junior Canadians, Chase Thompson with the Coburg Cougars, and I guess it's kind of strange, but there's another, and Matthew McMillan with the Burlington Cougars. So some players who would have had key roles have decided to move on. So that opens the door for some young guys, and I'm pretty excited to see some of the young players, and kind of neat seeing a group of 5 kids that played on a pretty special 2023 U18 Trappers team, and a team that had won multiple Northern Championships over the course of Pee Wee and the Bantam years before that U18 championship. So to have those 5 guys on that team, Caden Cowell coming over in a trade, Heath Bradley and Anthony Boyce joining Justin Rousseau and some guy named Caleb Dawson. I know they're really excited, and because we have a younger team, not necessarily we only have one 16-year-old and one 17-year-old. So our team, but instead of having a team based primarily of 20-year-olds like last season, we're primarily built up. The core is 2006 birth year, which is a bunch of 18-year-olds. A lot of those being the ones that played with that Trappers team.
Well, you mentioned Caden Cowell, and I kind of mentioned it on the broadcast that we had of the preseason game. It always felt like if this was going to be an eventuality with him, the Espanola years were kind of, okay, go get your growing pains out and then we'll bring you home kind of thing. Did that always seem like a logical step that Caden Cowell would come to Espanola, or Powassan from Espanola?
You know what? Everybody takes a different process. I mean, I know Caden originally wanted to, he chose to go to Espanola even as an affiliate when some of the Trapper kids were going up and playing in Peter Goulet's first year with the Voodoos. And he just decided to go there. And, we've had that happen a lot where a guy will go and affiliate with another team, knowing there's 4 or 5 other forwards on the team that might be getting called as well. And certainly, he had a really good year in the championship season as an affiliate, almost averaging a point a game, playing with Signoretti, which doesn't hurt for an affiliate player. But yeah, everybody's got an interesting path, and Caden wanted to come home, and he's a passionate player, powerful skater. He's looks so great out there on the ice, and I think he really wanted to come home, and he really wants to take his game to the next level. He went and had a really good OHL camp in Barrie. Really thought, many of us thought maybe he would be maybe making that team. He didn't, so I think he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder and really wants to do something special this year with this Voodoos group.
A couple of your players also locally having a couple of good camps. I mean, Caleb with the battalion, Caden Dubroy with the battalion. Just what does it mean for those guys in general to go up and play at that level, see what it's like to get to that next level, and then come back and bring that experience to Powassan?
I think it's all about the development process. Sam Rive is a kid over the summertime. From when I go and look at his development, from seeing him after his midget year, after he was drafted by the battalion at the May camp, and then see his progress over the course of the summer, and see how well he did. Making as an 11th round pick, making that last cut, playing in those last 2 green and white games with, all the vets, that says a lot. And I think that he's going to have a pretty special year for us. So, but it definitely does. It gives the players an opportunity to see where they need to be at to get to that level. And, when they come back down to us, you just hope they're not discouraged and they have the motivation of maybe not making the team, on their shoulders to use that to get off to a good start.
I want to talk about your leadership group as well, because obviously a whole new group of players wearing letters this year compared to years past. I mean, you had Alex Little, who was either sharing the C or wore the C for, I believe, 3 seasons, right? So he's obviously aged out, but now you have a new captain and a couple of alternates as well.
Yeah, Jackson Smith's a guy that came in around Christmas time last year. Wasn't really having a tough time in the first. He played he started in the AJ, and then he went to Colorado in the North American League, and had a tough time there, and really wasn't sure what he was going to do, with the game of hockey. But one of the great things about hockey is networking, and Jackson Smith was a good friend of Mitch Wilkie, who came from the Saskatchewan League and had a really good season with us. Now he's playing NCAA hockey at Salem State, and he was a free agent and decided to give it a wing here in Powassan, and had some injury problems to start the year, but boy oh boy did he start his time with the Voodoos, but boy oh boy over the season he really wanted to work hard this summer. I got to see him at the Chowder Cup this summer, and I barely recognized him. He lost a bunch of weight, looked really physically strong, and he looked really good on the ice playing for Peter Goulet's North American team at the Chowder Cup. And you know what, he's a leader. He's the guys listen to him. The guys respect him. And you know what? He's a great guy to wear a letter. We weren't sure who was going to have a letter to start the year, but you know, he was in a conversation even before some of those other players had left as being a guy that you know, maybe should wear the C. And I think he's going to be a great captain for the Voodoos.
Yeah, and you guys named him captain very early. You know, training camp hadn't even opened yet. It was still a couple of weeks away. And you also, a couple of weeks later, named Justin Russo an alternate captain as well. So what do you, I know you've watched Justin a lot. But
you got to love Justin. Justin, where he may not be the type of guy who's going to go in there and a raw guy that's going to, you're going to go have an inspirational speech in between periods. But man, oh man, his inspiring, how he inspires the team is the way he plays the game. And he plays the game honesty. He works his, you know, goes 100 miles an hour all the time, finishes all his checks, and is a great guy to look up to. You know, he's one of the 19-year-olds on the team. So strangely enough, he was a rookie last year at 19. He's one of the grizzled vets at 19 with the Voodoos. But man, oh man, does he lead by example. He's a quiet leader, and of course was the captain of that Trappers team in 2023 that won the championship. And you know, he's very well liked and well respected. Pretty quiet guy. I don't know how much we got to get him in the podcast sometime, don't we? He hasn't been on. He wasn't on last year, so but we'll have to get him in because he's a treat to talk to. Real smart guy, and you know, I think he was a no-brainer for sure. I think even with some returners, he was a guy who's going to have a letter this year.
So then, you know, coming out of training camp, getting ready for the season, you guys finished off the announcements with newcomer Adam McKillop as one of the alternates, Caden Dubroy as an alternate at home, and Caleb Dawson as an alternate on the road. Just those three guys. What did you like from those guys? And
I think you got a chance to meet Adam, and I think he already started to show a little bit of his veteran presence as a 20-year-old defenseman from the OJ, coming back to play for us when he came to the July camp. And then I got to see Adam again with that small core of returners and some of the new guys that came to Boston with Peter and I at the Chowder Cup. And you know, just the way he kind of blended with that group of the 6 or 7 guys that were in Boston. You knew that he was respected in the room as well, and a guy very similar to Jackson Smith. Maybe a guy wears his heart on his sleeve a little bit more than Jackson. He's a little bit more vocal, and won't let. He's not going to score a lot of goals, but he is a guy who's going to defend, and he's going to make guys pay the price if they're going after our players. So.
And then, of course, you know, the other two guys, Caden and Caleb. What can you say about those two guys?
You know, 2 guys that paid their dues last year. You know, sat out some games in the playoffs. You know, spent a lot of time learning from a lot of the older guys, and probably both of them would have maybe thought maybe they should have had a little bit more ice time. But at the end of the year, they understood the process that happened with Peter and the 20-year-old players and the players that were ahead of them, and they paid their dues and they played well. And you know, Peter used to always say to them, you know, those two, you know, with Justin Russo, were probably the best fourth line in not just the NOJHL, but in the entire country. And he really liked those 3 together, and they haven't played a lot together now, but they certainly looked great in the playoffs together. Justin ended up moving up a little bit in the playoffs, but 2 hardworking guys. They are Caden's a quiet leader. He's more of a guy similar to Justin, will lead by example. Another guy who works hard, loves to finish his checks, and definitely has a deadly shot, which I'm sure we'll see this year. And Caleb, I know probably the best of everybody, obviously, being my son. And you know, he's a guy who understands process, and maybe that's one of the lucky things about having you know, living with me and getting to know coaches like Tom McCarthy and watching, you know, the development of hockey teams when he was 6 or 7 years old, and see how players play and their roles on different teams. So, you know, I think it was he may have a little more insight into kind of understanding how that works. But yeah, you know what, he's another one. He's put in the work, and I think you know what, he's pretty excited and flattered to get a letter. He was kind of surprised on Saturday. Peter, oh, by the way, your son's one of the captains. We had it right after the about 5 minutes before game time, I found out. So, anyways, it was a pleasant surprise, and certainly he was excited, and maybe showed that off a little bit with a pretty nice breakaway goal on a real nice pass from Sam Rive on Saturday. So yeah, like I said, it's all about process for all these players, and I know the younger guys that may have not played a bigger role, they know that they have a bigger role. And I see Carson Ricci, and shout out to Carson, he's always talking on our social media channels, and he saw the leadership group and he said the boys are growing up now, or whatever.
Yeah.
So and that's really what takes, and you see what it takes to win, you see what it takes to be a leader, and these guys are hoping to learn from really great leaders that the Voodoos had last year, and guys like Cam Lemke and Alex Little, and Tucker Shields.
Well, and also a little bit of house cleaning with them as well. 3 out of them, well, Jackson, Caleb, and Caden all have changed numbers too, so might take a little bit of getting used to in the first half. Not so much with Caleb, at least from our perspective, because we've seen him wear 10 for so long, but Caden wearing 11.
I don't know about the 11, because Caden Dubroy never wore 11 when I used to watch him when he was playing midget and back in U14 and under. So anyways, but he looks good in 11. That's a good number, and obviously a great player that played a couple seasons for us in Tucker Shields, who's at Liberty University now, and so he's got to be flattered that Caden took his number. So.
Well, we'll have to ask Caden as to what went into picking 11 after wearing 21. He looked good in 21 last year too. Yep. So I mean, with this season and everything, it's your 10th anniversary as a team. We'll talk about kind of maybe some of the best Voodoos players after our break. But when you look back at the 10 years, obviously I think there's one season that probably stands out pretty vividly in everyone's mind. But for you, from being here from day one to now, what's been the journey like as general manager of the Powassan Voodoos?
Well, you know what I mean. I think that the probably one of the most rewarding seasons was really the first season, going from scratch and really having to build a team literally right from June or July. Like, it was fairly late that the Voodoos came into being, and I was scouting for a team in the Saskatchewan League, the Humboldt Broncos, before that, because I had left the Junior Trappers team, which had moved to Mattawa. So you know what, I think that personally that first year, and Scott Ray, bless his heart, now and with the Owen Sound Attack head coach, just to see where we started and how we finished that year, getting into the Final Four in the league that year after starting the league, basically from scratch, and credit to at that time, and it still is a big part of how we operate here, just a different person that we're working with. But Stan Butler was very a key point of helping get this thing going for the Voodoos organization, and he was very helpful in getting us some really good players. And you look at the rules now, we're only allowed to have 2 16-year-old players now. You look at our first year, we had Brendan D'Agostino, we had Kyle Moore, who was a top 4 round pick, ended up having 25 goals in his rookie season. We had we had Jack Ondrovic in goal. We had, and then after Christmas, we ended up getting David Sherman. So we had 4 or 5 16-year-olds, and you had to get a card from another team, which they were allowed if there was a group of 16-year-old cards allowed in the league. And if the teams didn't use them, they were given back to the league, and you had to make a request to get the card. And of course, that first year, we ended up making a trade, bringing in North Bay's Jake Staples, and then we ended up getting David Sherman on January 10th. So what a great way we got a 6'4" second round OHL pick, and he had a great second half for us. And we got those 2 guys after January, and that really helped elevate us. So I would still say that obviously championships are very special, and that was the most special moment. But seeing the process from the start of 2014 to how we end up finishing up that year, finishing in the Final Four in the playoffs, was a pretty amazing season.
You guys, when you look back at the history of this team, have been remarkably, I would say, stable when it comes to the guys on the bench. You haven't made many moves. You haven't had to make anything crazy. So we're going to talk like Scott Ray, Max Gavin, Peter Goulet, Mark Lafleur are really the main ones that we have here. There was Bo Moyer for a little bit as well. But, just working with all those different guys and you yourself being, the constant behind the scenes, what's it been like working with all those guys?
You know what? All that whole group has all been, there's been some very fond memories. I mean, sometimes there's some situations that happen in hockey, and sometimes things don't work out, and getting a coach, leaving an organization is never easy. For the most part, most of our coaches left because they had other opportunities that they wanted to go to. Mark Lafleur went on to the Quebec League after us. Scott Ray went from the battalion to the battalion after, and Max Gavin went on to coach NCAA hockey out east, and continues to do so right now. But it's all been a really good group of people that I could always count on. There really was with everybody, even before the tough situation with Bo Moyer, we got along really well, and we had some good people helping from the beginning, like Glenn Hurd to Jamie Young to Mike Mackley. All these guys were very helpful, for me and helping me, do a lot of things, and scouts and guys like Brent Tomlinson, who's been around for a long time, and Mark Gagnon, who's now gone on to be an award-winning GM in Espanola. He started out as a scout with the Voodoos and ended up becoming an assistant coach on our championship team. So I think you kind of hope sometimes you see some of the success that they had, that maybe there is, maybe because we're junior A, Scott Ray doesn't go and do interviews saying Chris Dawson taught me this, taught me that, because it was junior A. But I hope in some way there is a bit of a fingerprint from working with them, because certainly I've learned a lot from the coaches. And of course, Peter Goulet is one of the best, one of the fairest, one of the most honest people you could ever meet in hockey. And he cares, and I think the one thing that I would say above everybody is I don't think there's another guy that cares as much about the players as Peter Goulet. But I could go through all these different coaches for their unique assets that they have that make them good coaches. But anyways, I'm going on a bit of a rant, but yeah. So that's pretty much it about the coaches.
Well, while we kind of stay on the coaches subject a little bit, last year you had the Joshes, Josh Hardiman, who has moved south and started a family, and really good to see. And of course, another job down there. Josh Dale, who was also an institution with the Voodoos for many years, and now he's with the U18 Trappers. I wanted to talk about, what it's like watching those guys kind of move up the ladder. I mean, Josh kind of stepped down a level to move up, but and then Josh Hardiman, of course, family reasons. But to watch them kind of move on as well, and then your new assistant coach that you have this year as well.
Yeah, Hardo was a great, tireless worker. Learned a lot from Peter, and he made despite the fact that family played the biggest part in congratulations to Josh and his fiance and their daughter Stevie, which is a great Voodoos name. Stevie Harlan being one of the greatest Voodoos of all time. We'll get into that later. But Peter said there's only a number of years you can be an assistant coach before you got to go out on your own. And I know he's helping at a hockey academy and a junior team out in Kingston. So. Tireless worker. The guys really embraced the messaging, and I think he's a really good hockey mind. And I said to him on the ice after the loss to remember the little guys like me, because I think he's another guy who's got a great hockey future in front of him. And Josh Dale, talk about putting in the dues. He's worked with almost every coach. Easy guy to get along with. I don't know, maybe a little bit different at OR, but a guy really easy to get along with. He worked well with all our coaches, and I think he really was, in a situation where he wanted to take a step back to take a big step forward, and joining a pretty talented U18 team this year, and a team that has a lot to prove after not getting to the Tournament of Champions last year, running into some injury problems, and then just kind of got into a funk late in the season. And I think Josh is ready to move these guys on, and hopefully we'll see a few of them in Voodoos jerseys in the future as well. So yeah, he's been great, and last but definitely not least, Vitaly Yachmanev. He came in and helped us coach after the Bob Moyer firing in 2018. He came in for part of a season. Of course, we knew him because his son Thomas, another great voodoo player, and we got to see Thomas and go from a 17-year-old who'd never played hockey in North America to really another all-time. I'm ruining your list, right? I keep bringing up the names, but Thomas Yachmanev, another one of the voodoo greats. And so I got to know him as a hockey dad, got to know him as a coach, and now get to know him as an assistant coach again. And you know what? I know Peter is very his ears are wide open to listen to the input that he gets from a guy who's coached in the KHL, has a brother who's still Dennis Yachmanev, who's still coaching in the KHL. So there's a tremendous wealth of knowledge, and I think that our guys are really fortunate to have a guy who's got over 20 years of experience like Peter, who has also coached pro with the Brampton Beast in 2015. So a tremendous wealth of knowledge. I think these guys are going to learn an awful lot from those two this year.
Well, when you have a coach that's coached guys that have gone on to the NHL and won championships himself, and then you have your assistant coach played with some guy named Wayne Gretzky, that's pretty impressive, right? Especially at the junior A level. Last thing I have for you while we look at the Voodoos as a whole before we take our break. You see a lot of teams either fold or move at this level kind of thing and move around a lot. I mean, just look at your former team. The Trappers are now essentially the Hearst Lumberjacks, but with a few stops in between. What's it mean to you to see a team like Powassan in a smaller market like that survive for 10 years?
You know what? I think you're proud. I think that certainly you have to give kudos to Jim Bruce for sticking it out. He was a partner involved in it. 6 owners at one time, including his son and the Rive brothers and Ray Sagan. And now it's it's him and working on a transition potentially for Peter to take it over. But got to give credit to the ownership. They were always behind us when we needed something or we needed to make a trade. It was always their ears were always open, and it's been a very good relationship with Jim working at this position, and knowing, and certainly he wants to win, so there's no question about that. So when we think there's a player or Peter has a player he thinks that can make this team better, if he tells Jim it's going to make our team better, he's going to allow us to spend some money to try to bring a player in. But yeah, I mean, it is, when you have one owner, I think you have a very similar message. For always from the start, they talked about it being ran like a first-class organization. That's the way it always has been. And we also certainly have to give credit to the battalion too, and of course Adam Dennis over the past few years. Now the president, I don't know how much I'm going to see him anymore because he's the big cheese. He's probably going to be more presidential speaking with President Jim Bruce, but Adam has done a great job working with us together, and obviously our first ever player that we had in a Voodoos uniform that got drafted in the NHL was Joe Verbetic, which was one of the players that Adam played a key part in sending to us that 18-19 season when Stan was there, but Adam was very integral in bringing Joe Verbetic in. But yeah, so a lot of those things, having a really good affiliation with the battalion and having really solid ownership, and having really good coaches throughout the course of the 10 years has been obviously a key as well.
Well, we'll looking forward to seeing season number 10 unfold in front of us here, starting as of the 13th.
Technically, it's season 9 because we didn't really have a season in the 2021 season because of our friend COVID. So
best buddies, eh? But we've already heard some names thrown around. We'll be coming back after our break here and to talk about some of the best Voodoos of all time, so stick around.
Average Joe's Eatery and Patio Bar is North Bay's only year-round lakefront restaurant. On the shores of beautiful Trout Lake, we have been serving delicious food and stunning views since 1999. Indulge in one of our delicious menu items, or simply sit with a cocktail in hand and watch the beauty of Trout Lake before your eyes. Check us out online at averagejoes.net or visit us in person at 3501 Trout Lake Road, North Bay.
The Goalie Resiliency Podcast, hosted by Chris Dawson and Dr. Rob Graham. With player interviews new and old, goalie insights, and everything you need to know about being a netminder, this is the podcast to check out. You can subscribe at youtube.com/goalie resiliency or instagram.com/goalie_resiliency.
Why is Northern Honda servicing more cars of all makes and models? Let's count the ways. 1. Our state-of-the-art facility has award-winning technicians. 2. Northern Honda has the lowest tire price guarantee, no matter what you drive. 3. The lowest synthetic oil change guarantee, and every 5th oil change is free for all makes and models. Plus, new Honda buyers get brake pads for life. See the service difference at Northern Honda, 1250 Seymour beside Home Depot.
Kids Sport North Bay is an organization that helps kids who otherwise couldn't get in the game with grants of up to $500. You can donate or find out more at www.kidsportcanada.ca.
And we welcome you back to the second half of the first episode here of the Frontline podcast in season 5. Again, absolutely wild to think that we're you'd be going off to school now if we put it out there in the world. But anyways, Kortney Kenny, pleased to be joined by the general manager of your Powassan Voodoos, Chris Dawson. And Chris, we teased a few names or maybe spoiled a bit of the list a little bit in the first half, but we were thinking, we were talking about a Mount Rushmore of sorts with the battalion earlier in the summer. We were talking about a Mount Rushmore of sorts with the Voodoos. And it kind of turned into a top 10 list of top 10 battalion players for Matt Sukram's article on Bay Today. And so we're going to kind of piggyback off that and talk about who we think our top 10 Powassan Voodoos of all time are.
Oh boy, I'm going to get in trouble probably. What about me? What about me, Chris? Come on.
Yeah, well, there's always the spot for honorable mentions. And there's many great players that have played for Powassan over the course of 10 seasons. And a few that I remember. But I'm going to lean on your knowledge a little bit more for the first half of this, the franchise history, because I started coming around in 18-19. So that's a lot of my players that I were thinking of are from those seasons to now. But I mean, there are some gimmies from the first few years. So I think any list, we talked about him a little bit. I think any and all lists go with the jersey that you have up on that wall right there, Stevie Harlan.
Stevie Hockey, yeah. I mean, what a great story coming out of midget. Stan Butler told me he didn't think he would want to stay up here, and we talked to Steve, and he kind of fell in love with Powassan. And the crazy part was we had an all-star team. I think it was named in October that year, very similar to the event that they had last year in Trenton, and he wasn't considered on the list. And this is the guy that goes on to have what still stands as the most points in a single season at 95 with the Voodoos in an expansion team, which, I mean, is pretty amazing. We were a team that started from scratch. He was a graduating midget player from the Toronto Young Nats, and man, oh man, was he exciting to watch that first year. And of course, had some interest in going NCAA, halfway through his second year with us, or not even halfway, it was right around the showcase, the battalion offered him a spot. And kind of odd, not as a 19-year-old, a lot of times they don't sign a draft pick at 19, but they signed Steve, and he basically spent the next year and a half averaging almost a point a game in the OHL, which is pretty special. So he was our first real proud moment of development, and went on to Ryerson. And as I tell a lot of our players now, I talked to Steve over the holidays and a little bit in the spring, and it made him feel old that Caleb Dawson, the little tiny guy, little runt who'd stand next to him in the family skates, is wearing his number now. But Steve is going to try to become a doctor. He's going and taking biochemistry at the UBC. So he was at Ryerson. Definitely a good enough hockey player. Could have went from U Sport and played pro overseas. yeah, he just and that's the path. A lot of times these guys have to decide when they're gonna move on to something else. And of course that's the key about going to school in hockey is the school part ends up getting you a different type of career, and maybe the career that's going to be longer than your hockey career, right? So so he was definitely the biggest name and a real special one. I don't think he's ever going to come off of the top 10, top 5, let alone the top 10.
Yeah, I think we're already safe to say, usually these lists go 10 and up. I think we're safe to say Steve Harlan's probably number 1 on the list. I remember him very vividly playing for the battalion because he got called up my first season covering the battalion with Country 600 CKAT. And he was just nice in interviews. He was just great to see. And he really helped the team out during a dark year where they missed the playoffs and everything. But I think he was the leading scorer that year for them too, or close to it. And it's like this guy was just playing junior A. And now he's up here being one of the best players in the battalion. So really good to see. I think if we're going to work this kind of backwards, maybe we'll start at 10. So we've already got 1. Spoilers, everyone at home. We'll start with number 10. There's a few good considerations. In my mind, I'm going to go with a goaltender here in Joe Verbeek.
Yeah, Joe had a real special year. Certainly, it was a different year. It was a bit of a transition year coming out of the year that we had the really good season on ice and had a upset in the first round from Timmins and went through the turmoil with a coaching change. And Max Gavin came in his first year and got this 6'6" goalie from the battalion, and you know what? He was really good. He was with a bit of an older team, but Joe basically won that series, that one opening series against Kirkland Lake that season. Of course, we ended up losing to Mark Lafleur's Hearst Lumberjacks in 4 straight after.
The closest sweep you'll ever see.
Yes, 2 overtime losses up in Hearst. So yeah, that one was tough. But yeah, a real special year. Joe, obviously you can't teach size, and a 6'6" goalie. The scouts love the big goalies, and obviously another flattering part for us is seeing him as the first ever full-time Voodoo to get drafted, in the National Hockey League. So certainly a very proud moment having Joe on that list. And like I said, only 1 year, but he's still working hard in the Canadian system, and we wish him well. As I know he'd probably hope to get closer to playing with the Canadians than playing in the ECHL this year. I
know when we talked to him when the Frontline first started, one of his favorite team ever was the Montreal Canadiens, so he landed pretty much where he wanted to be. Well, I'm sure he would be happy with any team, but
for sure
to go as a boy cheering for the Habs and Carey Price, and now you're going to camps with Carey Price when he was still around, right? But I do have to we'll give our first honorable mention because he was kind of, if Joe was the 1A that year, he was the 1B, and I'll give Christian Chichagoy our first honorable mention kind of thing. He just might miss out on the list a little bit, but man, was he fun to watch too.
Yeah, he was, and he's part of arguably the best, and I'm going to throw a name out there that's going to be up in the list too. Arguably the best tandem we ever had in Christian Chichagoy and Owen Say. Like, man, that was a great tandem. We ended up getting at a tough year for the battalion, ended up becoming a very good year for the Voodoos. Us getting Christian at the deadline, and of course that year was the year that bring up that. The C word, COVID again, and that ruined, I think, probably a team that I think had what it took to win another championship.
Yeah, he could very well have too. We should also preface this list too. I should have started this at the beginning, but we talked about this before we went to air. But the affiliate players aren't really going to make the list. So that's a Colton Point, Justin Brazo, guys like that who weren't officially signed to the team but have gone on to do great things in hockey. And, played well while they were here in Powassan, too. But to me...
Mike McIver,
yes, exactly.
But Mike did play, but he only played 2 games with us, so...
Yeah, Cash Money looking good out there in Voodoo's white jerseys because he only played on the road. The other one that I'm thinking of, if we're talking about one-season wonders, even though it was a great season, I think number 9, I'm going to go and dip into the 2019-20 season and bring out Gregory Trudeau-Paquette.
Yeah, there was a guy really, when you go look at our team that year, I think the closest team I could think of to that team, maybe we had a little better goaltending. Sorry, Edmonton, but it was almost him and Parker Bowman, another name, and I'm spoiling. You'll hear his name soon in this list, but I kind of looked at Parker with his speed and how he was able to shoot on the fly and do so many things in full stride. He really reminded me of like the Connor McDavid of the NOJHL. And I really, think that it's too bad that he didn't get an opportunity to play major junior, because he definitely had the tools to play major junior hockey. But man, was he fun to watch. And then you had the gritty guy, great compliment, just like Draisaitl and McDavid. Parker Bowman was kind of the more grittier guy, who great shot, so I loved it. I mean, he came back and played college hockey, was going to go play pro in Europe. Things just didn't work out for him after COVID, but he had an incredible year in the ACHA, where same school that Cameron Lemke's going to, and I think he's got a pretty tough shoes to fill with Gregory, because I think Gregory averaged over 2 points a game in his one season. He was definitely a special player, and that was a real great trade that we were able to bring him in from Kirkland Lake that summer.
I remember watching him in that Kirkland Lake series too, that we talked about with Joe Verbetic in net, where I was like, man, this guy can fly. Him and Sam Elwood seemed to be the top two guys, and then you guys go out and get both of them.
Can't beat him, join him, right?
But you did beat him.
Yes, we did eventually.
I guess they joined you then. For number 8, this is where we're going to kind of I'm going to lean on your expertise a little bit, but I think we're going to go with the defenseman here. As we were talking beforehand, I didn't even think of this guy until you brought up his name, but Dayton Murray.
Yeah, Dayton Murray still does a bit of part-time scouting for us in Western Canada. So, what a special find he was. He was really a guy that, was playing for the Temiskaming Titans, and I think maybe met Scott Ray when Scott was working part-time at Skaters, at our friends at Source for Sports. We started to have a conversation after he had a really good year in Temiskaming, and man, oh man, there wasn't another Voodoo that could shoot a puck like Dayton Murray. And of course, not only did he come in and have a great season with us, he ended up playing, a handful of games with the battalion as a free agent from Alberta. So that, he had to go through waivers through the Western Hockey League, and then he had to, the OHL took him. So, I even think, talking to John Dean about it, that maybe Dayton Murray should have been a guy on that power play, because they didn't have a guy like him. But of course, it's hard to go take an affiliate who's not a drafted player and put him on the power play. But man, oh man, could he shoot a puck.
I remember him, Eric Nagy, and Bo Pelche all playing games that season for the battalion. So that's how beleaguered the battalion were at one point due to injuries and all that stuff. But that's the same season I think Steve Harlan came up. Or I might be ahead a year or two, but
no, Steve left the year. Dayton came the following year.
Okay, so Steve was still on the battalion when Dayton came up, but that would have been his overage season. So, so I think Steve came up. Yeah, that's right. Steve played his OA year, the year that they missed the playoffs, but he was still a bright spot on that team.
Absolutely.
Who do you think we should throw out there for number 7?
Well, I think one, you just mentioned him a little bit, was a guy named Eric Nagy, captain of a championship team. Played, I think 3 seasons with us. So, he was there. He paid his dues. He was, again, not a guy, known for his offensive play, but a quiet leader. I'd look at him as kind of a guy like Justin Brazo. Never took a night off, worked his, butt off. And, obviously things worked out tremendous for him as he ended up, being the captain of our championships team in 2017. And I remember him saying how happy he was that he came back for that special year. And, he came in and met some of the guys, came up from his home in Central Ontario and came and watched our playoff run. And, it's great. He's definitely got to be someone in there. You're not going to see him on the stats, but, when you go look at the type of player, if you ask a coach like Scott Ray about Eric Nagy, I'm sure he would be saying, and Scott was only there 3 years, he would have him in his top 5 of players for sure.
I think, if the season had never been, for our next list, we'll go with number 6. I think if the season had never been canceled because of our buddy COVID, I think this guy would have crept higher up on the list, but I got to give it to Thomas Yachmanev at this point at number 6.
Yeah, what a special player. Thomas came in and, really came in as a 17-year-old who wasn't sure if he was going to play AAA with the Trappers. Guy Blanchard really wanted him to play in the Trappers, but I thought he was too good. And, talking to Max Gavin too, we've thought that he was pretty special. So he came in that 18-19 year, was a very good player, and spent 3 seasons with us. And what a quiet leader, brought a different element, was taught the game. His mom's from North Bay, Tina, and obviously Vitaly's his dad who played here, but there's just an element of his game that was a bit different for the fact that he grew up and played his minor hockey in Russia. Just some of the skill plays that he made were just different than you would see from a Canadian kid. And the one play I remember fondly, and I think if we were going to do a top 10 plays of the 10 years, is a sweeping backhand poke check shorthanded. And he goes in and puts the puck between his legs and beats the goalie. Now the score wasn't it was already 8-0, so it wasn't like an overtime winner, but man, it was just that sweeping poke check and then the fancy finish to it. But he just had a special way about him, and wasn't the biggest guy, and probably the only reason that kept him away from playing NCAA Division I was for his size, he had to be a bit of a better skater. But man, oh man, what a talented guy! Guy saw the ice so well, and and a treat to watch. And I know a lot of fans, and I know you would have remembered the one overtime shootout winner against Timmins. And he came up to center ice and did the bow. And I will say too, he is the best Voodoo player of all time to sport a bow tie.
Yeah, every game. Every game without fail, he wore a bow tie. It was fantastic to watch. I was going to mention that overtime winner, but I think that game 2 was against French River, the play you were talking about, and I think that was he scored 8 points that night. That's how ridiculous he was.
Yeah. Well, it was the guys before you, I think it was Jordan Pearson and Jerry Mathias, they couldn't keep up that many goals. I think Jordan lost track. Is that a hat trick goal? No, that's 4 goals. So he was telling you, scoring so much that you can't keep track. That means you're definitely doing something right.
It's tough. I remember doing the public address for that game, and I was just like, okay, well, know who it is again. I think for 5 and 4, we got to give it to 2 guys that one held the record, but he has a championship on his resume, and the other guy came in as a walk-on in camp and broke the records, and that's going to be Nate McDonald and Owen Say. I think you got to talk about one and talk about the other kind of thing back to back on the list.
Absolutely. Nate McDonald was a guy who came in, and he came in as a backup goalie to start, and knew he was probably going to have to pay his dues and get a certain amount of games, but knew that nothing was going to be handed to him. And he worked hard. Some things worked out well. Our older goalie that year, Owen Liskowitz, kind of struggled out of the gate, and we ended up moving him. And Nate kind of took the opportunity and took the bull by the horns and really took over the role as the number 1 goalie. And man, oh man, 26-game winning streak. Went to the CHL prospect game, played against a guy named Cale McCarr in that game. And
who's he?
Yes, and then obviously was in net for all our 13 straight or 12 straight wins in the NOJHL championship year. So yeah, what a first-class young man. Went on to play in Cornell. Kind of got the bum's rush after his 4th year. Transferred to Michigan State, and Michigan State cans the coach that tries to commit to him with this new portal thing, which is almost like a trade wire, where players could go in NCAA and move on to different schools at different times in their NCAA career. And the new coach subsequently calls him and says, "I'm decommitting to you." And he was panicking to try to find a spot. Went to Guelph. Didn't have the greatest year there, and just decided he wanted to get into to goalie coaching, and now he's giving back. Now he's a battalion assistant coach. A guy that I know, Adam Dennis, when I told him that Nate was retiring, I think he got on the phone the day before through his time machine to call him. He really thought Nate had a lot to offer, and he certainly does, and he's doing a great job with goalies as a goalie coach now, moving on from his playing career. But no doubt he's on that list, no doubt.
Yeah, so number 5, and then, well, we could flip them either however which way you at home or us here want to talk about it, because to me they go hand in hand. But again, I'll say number 4, Owen Say, like a walk on at camp, and then he goes and shatters all the goaltending records.
Absolutely,
in a single
and what an amazing goalie he was, and he came in as a third goalie. We had 2 goalies signed, and he had to push one of those out to get a spot, and he was comfortable with that coming in from Junior B. And man, oh man, just by the time the late fall, he was in conversation for Team Canada East, and ended up winning a silver medal with Team Canada in Dawson Creek. And obviously, this is a guy who has a big runway. He may be the first full-time Voodoo to get an NHL contract, and he's played in Mercyhurst, had a couple amazing years there. In his final year, he decided to go through that portal, and he's at Notre Dame. So Owen, the Fighting Irish goalie this year, hoping to do some big things, and of course went to Pittsburgh Penguins camp this summer. So wish all the best for him. There's a big runway in front of him, and we're excited to be along for the ride, Owen. But definitely a very special netminder, no doubt.
Yeah, for sure. He was fun to watch that year, and then even going to Team Canada East, and the only reason why he didn't play was there was some guy named Devin Levi ahead of him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's pretty good company to be in. I just realized that we have 2 spots, but there's 3 guys on my mind here, because we've already named Steve Harlan number 1. So I'm just kind of put them however which way, because this might be a top 11 list at this point.
Yeah.
But I think the next guy we got to talk about is the guy who was most recently the captain. He holds all the defensive records basically for offense as a defenseman, and that's Alex Little.
Yeah, no doubt. Alex is a true leader. He's been through a lot. He's technically been through 3 coaches, because he was an affiliate with us when Max Gavin, when he was an affiliate player, and Max Gavin was the coach in 1920. Then Mark Lafleur, and then a couple seasons with Peter Goulet. But what a tremendous character guy. I'm disappointed that he didn't get more NCAA Division I interest. With the type of skater he was, maybe he just didn't have the size and the strength, maybe in their mind, to get a Division I commit. But he's very happy in where he's going, to Niagara University, ACHA Division I, and we wish definitely the best for you, Alex. A true leader, and definitely a guy that a lot of the players, the younger players that are now leaders, are learning from you to be leaders this year. So definitely, I'd get in a lot of trouble if Alex Little wasn't in the top upper echelon of great Voodoos players.
All right, here's the guy. Here's one of the guys that we may have. You would know him a lot better than I would, because I only got to watch him play 1 game, and that was Game 1 against Timmins on your championship run. Actually, we might as well make it a top 12, because there's another guy during that championship run we've omitted too at this point. But I want to talk to you about one of my favorite Leafs of all time, Doug Gilmour. So we got to talk about Tyson Gilmour.
Yes, Tyson was a really neat story. Wasn't getting a lot of love down in Toronto, trying to get into the breaking out of midget and going and playing junior hockey. So he came up here, and again, here's another guy who had to pay his dues. He goes up to Timmins. Scott Ray scratches him, and I remember the Timmins media were all saying, "Oh, come to the game to watch of Powassan Voodoos." Doug Gilmour's son Tyson, he didn't play that game. So, it was a process, a learning process. I think he came a little bit later in camp too, but certainly he's a guy who got better as the year kind of progressed, and was with us for 2 seasons and put up some great numbers. He's at Genesee now in NCAA, and so definitely a very tremendous vision. Some of the plays that you see him make, you're like, especially in the back door, when he would do a nice backdoor pass from behind the net out front, you're like, oh geez, he looks a little bit like someone a lot of Leafs fans remember and love. So some special moments, and definitely an amazing, talented hockey player in Tyson Gilmour. First
Leafs jersey I went out and bought myself was a Doug Gilmour one. So this guy came to mind as I was talking about, the championship run, because I unfortunately didn't really, like I said, I got to see one game. I came to the one game, and it was great because, again, it was against Timmins. Tom Parisi's with me, and Tom's from Timmins, and so he was kind of cheering for Timmins. You guys blew them out of the water. But Harrison Israels, we got to talk about Harrison Israels.
Yeah, Harrison was a guy, again, this is another guy in the same conversation as Owen Say. This is a guy who had American Hockey League and East Coast League, or ECHL hockey opportunities this year, but he decided instead of, leaving college and having one more year of eligibility because of our friend COVID that we keep bringing up. I don't like that.
No.
But he has another year of eligibility, and he's at Nebraska Omaha this year, looking to get hopefully a two-way deal, NHL, AHL deal instead of a two-way AHL, ECHL deal. And certainly, a guy who was a captain on that team in Alaska Fairbanks, but a guy who came in again. One of the unique things about that 2017 season was it was the only time we actually had a camp going on the same time that we were still playing. We didn't have a camp this year. We would have run into the same issue this year if we played getting into the finals. But we had a camp going on the same time we were playing the Blind River Beavers, the first two home games in that series. So what a great way to promote your program, to have your players come in, prospects come in for a couple days and see two playoff games, pack barns at the Powassan Sportsplex, in the finals of the NOJHL. And of course, he was one of the ones that came up, and, give credit to Mike Mackley, who was working with us at the time, and kind of got him on our radar. And what a very talented player. Again, a guy that came in, wasn't maybe a top guy right away, but certainly, as the season progressed, got better and better in that 17-18 season. Had a scary injury that, we're so thankful to see him recover from. And he got through that. And I know, he still has his connections with the Ross family, his Billet family. They still see him all the time. And I still talk to Harrison from time to time. And I know during COVID, he even did a Zoom call. We did a Zoom call with a bunch of young hockey players in North Bay, and Harrison gave his time. So, one of the real good guys, I would have to say, out of the Voodoos, if you're going to see and meet a real good quality person, not just a great hockey player, Harrison Israels is that type of guy.
Well, it sounds like we'll have to invite him on the show at some point. But to me, this guy...
You're going to invite him on. I'll get him on for you, my friend.
Perfect.
For sure. Harrison,
why we keep him
you're
around.
On. I mean, again, he could be signing an NHL contract at the end of this year. So a tremendous runway for him. And anyways.
So with that being said, we're going to talk about a guy who won a championship with you, went away for a couple of years, and then came back as a captain. You mentioned him a little bit when we talked about Greg Trudeau-Paquette. To me, this guy's number 2 on the list just because of everything that he brought to the team leadership-wise. I mean, he wins playoff MVP. If you don't know who I'm talking about, it's Parker Bowman.
Absolutely. Parker Bowman, starting where he's playing in the former hometown of Scott Ray, and in the ECHL as an affiliate with the Calgary Flames. A couple great years. Parker Bowman's a talk about process again, and it's a big word that you use in hockey, and some people don't like process and don't understand that things you have to do A to get to B to get to C, and he started out. He was the first kid that we cut at our camp in 2015-16. First kid that came to our camp. First kid that we cut. I remember at camp, we did all our exit meetings. First kid we cut. What did he do? Came back the next year, got better. I don't think we ever got him in as an affiliate that year at all, but came in, played at the North Central Predators. We've had a pretty neat list of players that have another affiliate that's got an NHL deal. Is we got to talk about Connor Punnett. That's another one.
That's true. Yeah.
He's another former player from not only played for the Trappers but played with the North Central Predators in Central Ontario and Muskoka. But Parker came up in that first year, and we signed him in 16 in the championship season. season. And again, he's a guy, he was only 17 at the time. He just kept getting better and better as the season progressed, and, you know, ended up being our MVP in the playoffs. You know, he was a beast, and, you know what, had a couple great seasons in the Quebec League, played with some guy named Alex Lafreniere with Rimouski before he decided to come back for his final year in Junior A, and, you know, we're really flattered. You know, he had a lot of opportunities. A lot of OJ teams have been wanting to knock on the door, but he decided to go and come back to the Voodoos. And like I said, what a great tandem it was. The Voodoos version of Draisaitl McDavid. It was Trudeau Paquette and Bowman. And man, oh man, what a great leader he was. And you know what, had a great career too. You know. Maybe someone who wasn't going to... He went to OHL camps before, went to battalion camp, and he got let go, and then he played in the Quebec League, but you know, had a three and a half, 4 really good years with the Nipissing Lakers, and yeah, we wish the best to him playing for the Calgary Flames ECHL team.
Yeah, and he was gracious with us back when we had the Afterburner coming on a couple of times, so it was always nice having Parker Bowman around. But that list kind of ballooned a little bit to almost the top 13. Maybe.
Rapid City Rush.
There it is. Maybe top 14, and you'll always have to look at Scott Ray's retired number up in the banner.
Yes, he can, for sure.
I don't know if he wants to. He might want to, because Razor likes to get a big ego, right? But anyways, Chris, I really thank you for being along to kind of help me navigate our...
I just want to bring up a couple of names and a couple... we can't have these teams, and a lot of these names weren't... not a lot of local guys, but I got to tell you, you could also do a top 10 of all of some great local players, and we can't win. We can't be successful without having, you know, good local players. And, you know, there are a real crop. Maybe they aren't some of the all-time best, but there's a lot of them that were knocking on the door. The Dylan D'Agostino's, who came in as a 16-year-old, 20 goals with that 16-17 championship team. He was another one who was going to come back, went and played in the OHL for Hamilton, and then ended up going and playing Junior B for a season. He was going to come back if we didn't have to can the 2021 season. So Dylan D'Agostino's a name. Cam Moore is another one who, from New Liskeard, had his family from Powassan. He had a number of great years, played you know, a really good one season at Nipissing, and really the list goes on. There are a lot of really other good young local players. Tyler Peters had an amazing 40-goal season with us. You know, Ryan Mills, a battalion pick who came in and had a couple great years, and of course Eric Allaire, another guy who went on to play in the OHL and came back to play with us. So the list is long, but it's certainly we wouldn't be as successful as we were without having the good local connections. And another guy I'm going to throw out there because I love them is Brett Shawana on that championship team. Character guy. So it's not always about the points.
Yep.
You know, and but like I said, we can't do it without having our local connection too.
That too, and I meant to say too, when we were talking about Parker Bowman, you talk about the MVP, and he had 20 plus points in 12 games in the playoffs, and he almost went 2 for 2 in championship years. We'll
say you know what? At the end of the day, I mean, a lot of people don't like it, but you look at the standings at the end of the year when the season was canceled, and we were at the top. So really, I told those guys we really won the championship because nobody was ahead of us all year, and the season ended. So who's the winner? When the season ends, the team that's on top, we were champions that year.
I will still sit here though and say that we were robbed of an all-timer series between you guys and Timmins that year. That would have been something to watch.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially the heated rivalry, how heated it was back then. Oh absolutely. My goodness. But anyways, no, thank you so much, Chris. And I also have to mention, if we're talking about top 10 Voodoos, he wasn't a player, but we got to throw JJ out there just because his ego will just balloon. It'll be tough to get him in the room the next time we see him. So. He might be on the list of somewhere of maybe top 10 trainers or something.
Yeah, we might be able to get him on there, right?
Yeah, I think so. But thanks again, Chris, for helping us go through this first episode, and thanks for the use of the ice box as well. We really appreciate coming in here.
And we didn't even throw any pucks at you wearing that helmet.
You know what? We can avoid that. We'll do that for goalie resiliency.
There you go. Okay. Well, we still have to get you in goalie gear.
I'm here for it.
Oh,
I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. You heard it on the front line, the first episode of the season. And everyone else in this room heard it as well. well. So
we got all the goalie gear.
Yeah.
We just need to get you suited up. We got the ice surface. We don't even have to. You don't even have to embarrass yourself on Pete Pelangio ice. You can do it right here.
yeah, just fall.
Not
on
that
my
you'd
face
embarrass
right
yourself.
No,
I think you'd make some big stops.
You think I would? What do you think? I'd go 10 for 10?
Depends on who the shooter is. If it's me, 10 for 10. Yeah. If I'm shooting on you, you're making all the stops.
I don't want your son shooting on me. I'll tell you that right now. Pucks might just find them. Anyways, you can find us all the usual spots: YouTube, Instagram, all the social media places. I'm Kortney Kenny. He was Chris Dawson. As always, keep your eye on the front line.
The Frontline, hosted by Kortney Kenny, the official podcast of the Powassan Voodoos.